especially if you're emotionally invested. But even if you just look at the buildup of the season to get to this crescendo and then be let down with a crushing second half versus maybe suffering a loss or two early with an 8 or 9 win expectation and then running the table and finishing a strong 10-2 when there
and
were
not making the Pac-12 title game.
Yeah, where there was no big buildup and saying, hey, that was a great turnaround. That was a great first step, that first season, 10-2. Yes.
Totally. Like look at like Penn State. I think Penn State's a pretty good example there because Penn State lost its big games in the middle of the season, but was clean Gene in November, has several game winning streak to finish and just, moves up the rankings and gets the Rose Bowl bid. So you can say like, okay, Penn State has the Rose Bowl and USC's playing Tulane in the Cotton Bowl. So Penn State must have had the better season. You can't look at Penn State and USC in a head-to-head comparison and say with a straight face that Penn State, A, played better, and B, performed better and had better results in terms of the games it played over the course of 12, 13 games. Now, did Penn State have the better bowl outcome at the end as the product of its season relative to USC's season? Yes, of course. You'd much rather be in the Rose Bowl than you would be in the Cotton Bowl against the Group of 5 champion. But that's a bowl outcome. It's not an outcome of a game played on the field. In terms of the games that these teams played during the season, USC was better, and USC had the better resume, and USC got more out of its talent than Penn State. But because Penn State won its last several games and finished 10-2, just as you kind of outlined in terms of your hypothetical, there's no withering criticism of James Franklin. Even though Lincoln Riley did a better job than James Franklin did this season. So that is a great illustration of how, recency bias and also just, the last game that you play in the regular season, the last game you play does leave a very big impression. And especially when it's for the stakes that were involved in that game, USC having a chance to go to the playoff and, of course, falling short. Great point on your part.
USC, of course, had Utah on the ropes, but not drastically on the ropes. You also wonder, both from a scoring and time management situation, but even maybe more so from a psychological standpoint, had USC been able to add on to that lead when they had the opportunity, how much that, of course, just mathematically gives them more distance, but psychologically ups their confidence, puts Utah in a place where maybe it seems close to insurmountable, despite all the time left in the game, that they were maybe very close to getting that game to a point where they would have had it really in hand.
There's no doubt about it. And we could see everything turn after that moment. We could see Utah steadily growing in confidence. Neither team was good on third downs in the first 20 minutes of that game. USC converted 2 fourth downs to get its touchdowns and to get that 17-3 lead, but it didn't convert a third down all the while. But then in the middle of the second quarter, Utah began to convert third downs, and Utah began to shift the game on third downs, and it just led to a snowball. And of course, the other part is that Utah was able to stack together possessions, getting the ball early in the second half, and so Utah was able to bridge the end of the second half, the end of the first half with the start of the second half, which is something it also did when it came from 14 points down in that October game in Salt Lake City. So in addition to the psychology, there was also just the reality that Utah was able to bridge possessions in the middle eight, that fashionable new term in college football, and that was able to just create this big pendulum swing effect, and it magnified USC's inability to pounce when it had the chance to get a 3-score lead over Utah for the first time this season. Not doing that, very decisive in the outcome.